Well, good morning, church. It is so good to be with you. My name's Ethan Magness, one of the ministers here, and glad you're here on this beautiful summer weekend. Like you said, day camp is tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. I checked in with him yesterday. We have 255 kids registered in advance for day camp. It's the most we've ever had. We are so excited about this, but we still have space. So if you are thinking now, oh my goodness, I forgot to register my kid, don't worry, show up early. We'll have a line for you. It will take you longer because you didn't pre-register, but we're ready. We want you to be a part of day camp. It's going to be great. Also, visiting with us this weekend are the Corsies. There's some missionaries we support in Thailand. If you want to meet them and hear about their ministry, swing by the atrium downstairs, and if you want to be a part of their ordination service, that's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. down in the refuge, kind of the far end of the Mount Castle Center. 6 p.m. tomorrow. Show up for that. We'd love to have you be a part of that. We're in a series called Good Parties, thinking about Christian hospitality. We've learned that hospitality describes how we love strangers, the people that aren't yet part of our inner circle, the acquaintance that needs to turn into a dear friend. That's hospitality. And today we've got a really simple goal today, okay? Real super simple. We're going to clarify the last step in our hospitality strategy, and then we're going to make a commitment to Christian hospitality. We need a strategy because hospitality does not come naturally to most of us. The writer of Hebrews says this to people. He says, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. You know, that's the thing we naturally do. The people you already know, the people that are already part of your inner circle, you just naturally keep on loving them. But don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. The people that aren't part of your inner circle, the people you don't know well yet, the people you see on the street and you walk by without noticing, the people that, they work 3 offices over, but they're new and you haven't really gotten to know them yet. Don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels and didn't even know it. This is why we need a strategy for hospitality, because we can forget, and yet the Bible commands that we don't. And in this series, we've been noticing that the principles of hospitality are rather simple. It's the doing of it that matters. And that's why today, again, I want to be super clear. Today, this sermon ends with me challenging you to throw a party. And the reason it ends with that simple challenge to do the thing instead of just learn about the thing is because this is how Jesus works. Here's how Jesus ends one of his famous sermons. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Wisdom, Jesus says, is when you hear the word and put it into practice. He goes on, the rain came down, the stream rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fail because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is foolish. Isn't it interesting? We notice this. According to Jesus, the wise person and the foolish person are equally educated. They have the same information. Both the wise man and the foolish man both heard all that Jesus taught. The difference is not our education. The difference is not what we've heard. The difference is not what we've taught. The difference is whether we obey. And he says, the foolish man who hears and does not put it into practice, well, the rain came, the streams rose, the winds blew, beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. And so today's sermon is going to end with a very simple challenge to me and to you to actually do the work, take the final step, and throw a party. Maybe your party is just going to be you and a friend out for breakfast. Or you say to a bunch of people in the office, hey, let's go get tacos. Because that's always a good reason for a party. Or maybe you're finding and invite that new neighbor into your home that you've been wanting to get to know. All right, here's our strategy. We've been talking about the strategy. Here it is. Step 1, good parties make more room. Do you have in your life enough room to invite a stranger to join you? Number 2, good parties have a good reason and a good occasion. The occasion of the party is any excuse you can think of to make the invitation. The reason for the party is to show someone the love of Jesus through your hospitality. Number 3, Adam last week talked about this. Good parties have a good guest list. Simply put, who are the people that God has put into your path? You see them in the hallways here in the church, or maybe they're a part of your Sunday school class. You've just never gotten to know them. Maybe they're new at the office, or they're new at school, or they're a neighbor down the road, and you walk your dogs at the same time and you wave, but you've never gone past the wave. And God just keeps sending them in your path week after week after week, but you've never gone past the wave. Maybe it's time to go past the wave and actually show hospitality. And then this week, we're going to add our 4th strategy. Good parties are places of welcome. Places of welcome. To welcome someone, especially to welcome a stranger into your life, to welcome a new person into your life, is to disrupt the rhythm of your life for the sake of the other. Right? I mean, to welcome somebody you already know, there's no disruption there. Betsy and I have friends that they'll come to the door and they'll knock on the door of the house, and we just keep doing whatever we're doing. And we'll just holler out, doors open. There's no disruption to our life. They walk on in, they do their thing, we do our thing. Because that's to welcome someone you already know who's already part of your life and fits in your life, there's no disruption. But to show hospitality to a new person, to welcome a new person, requires you to disrupt your life so that they feel welcome. One of my favorite stories that demonstrates this is in Genesis 18 in the Old Testament of our Bibles. In fact, this is probably the story that the Hebrew author is referring to when he says, don't forget to show hospitality. By doing so, some have entertained angels without knowing it. He's probably remembering this story from Genesis chapter 18. It's a story when Abraham and Sarah showed radical hospitality to 3 strangers that show up outside their tent. Genesis 18, verse 1. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Now, how does the Lord appear? Well, in the person of these 3 men, who we find out later in the story were angels, messengers of God. Verse 2, Abraham looked up and he saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. Now, first, I want you to notice, how does Abraham react to the presence of 3 strangers at his front door? He rushes to the chance to show these strangers hospitality. He runs out to them, he bows down in greeting, and then here's he says, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, that you may all wash your feet and rest underneath this tree. Let me then get you something to eat so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way now that you have come to your servant. He sees the stranger, and his first instinct is, please, let me show you some hospitality. Now, what you're going to notice is that Abraham's version of hospitality is radically disruptive. Whatever he had planned for the day, whatever he was going to do that day, his plans have changed because an opportunity for hospitality has presented itself. And they say to him, oh, very well, do as you say. Sure, you can find us something to eat. You can wash our feet. We'll hang out for a while. So Abraham hurries into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Okay, this is the first thing we got to pause and notice. Ancient measurements are a little complicated, and sometimes we don't know exactly how big they are. A seah, you all don't measure flour in seah, but I'll be honest, whenever I'm not a great bread breaker, but I bake some bread, and I've got a kind of a standard bread recipe that takes 3 cups of flour. It's kind of my standard thing. And so whenever I read this text, I'm always like, oh, I bet that's what that is. I bet it's a lot like what I'm baking. I'm picking a nice loaf about that big. But no, a seah of flour is like 7 or 8 quarts of flour. And so this is like 20 to 25 quarts of flour. This is a huge amount of baking. This would be enough for a party, not just for their 3 guests, but for all of them. They're going to stop and have a celebration. And again, just think for a second how long this is going to take. Like, this is not some quick operation here. These people are going to be here for hours while she bakes that much bread. He goes on. Then he ran out to the herd. How far away was that? I don't know. Selects a choice, tender calf, gives it to a servant to hurry and prepare it. And again, just think for a second. You know, we think of running to the fridge, right? I want to run to the fridge and get some steaks. No, they were running to get a live animal. Do you know how long it takes to clean and butcher and do all the things to prepare? I don't know, but it's not 10 minutes. It's a while. Okay. So then he goes and he brings curds and milk, and the calf had been prepared. He sets it before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. This is a day-long event that Abraham has committed to provide hospitality for these 3 strangers. And then he stands by them. Why does he stand near them? Well, in that time, the host stood near the guests so that if they needed anything, their water refilled, another slice of veal, the host was ready to provide what they needed. "Where's your wife Sarah?" they asked. "There in the tent," he said. And then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." And actually, that is the beginning of the main point of Genesis 18. The main point of Genesis 18 is this prophecy about Sarah, who's going to have a son, and all the things that the angels, the messengers of God, have to tell Abraham. But it starts with this story of radical hospitality. Mountains of bread. A day spent preparing the finest beef, the best cream and curds, and the host standing by, ready to meet their every need. Welcoming a stranger into your life requires you to be willing to disrupt your habits and expectations for the sake of the other. This is what it means to be a welcoming, hospitable person. And our hospitality isn't complete until we learn to love the stranger well enough that we will disrupt our rhythms in order to include them in our lives. Hospitality starts, yes, by making room and knowing your reason and making the invitation, but hospitality isn't fully hospitality until you welcome them and receive them into your lives. A welcoming that prioritizes the needs of your guests is an essential ingredient to hospitality. And maybe you can start to think about how this applies to the areas of your life. I will say, in my life, my wife Betsy is great at this. She is great at a hospitality that remembers the needs of her guests. I'm trash at this. She's great at it. Have you noticed, maybe you've noticed, surely you've noticed, how in the last 20 years, there has been just a proliferation of very specific dietary needs? Right? Like you've noticed this, right? Like, there's vegan and vegetarian, and there's keto and gluten-free and gluten light and all the different things. And then all the allergies, right? And some people, like, they say they have an allergy, but you discover really it means I eat it, I just get sick later. And some people are like, no, if there's dust in the house, I die, right? And so it's all over the place. The dietary needs of people are all over the map. And as a host, as a person trying to practice hospitality, there are lots of ways to react to this, right? My temptation is to react with anger, right? Like, are you kidding me? They'll eat what I serve, and that's what I'm serving. If they can't eat, they don't need to come. Like, I know the next time you tell me about, oh, you're doing this special diet and keto or whatnot, or you're counting, oh, no, I got no time for whatever points you're counting. We are serving what we're serving. We're serving what we're serving. Maybe it's exhaustion. You're like, it's just too hard. It's just too hard. We'll just go out. I cannot have people in my home. Maybe it's annoyance. But there is another way to respond. You could respond with hospitality. You could respond like, okay, this is what it takes to be a loving host. You've got to figure out what they need. And my wife is amazing at this. When we're having big groups over, she will, weeks in advance, start researching, texting, what are your dietary needs? What are your dietary needs? And she'll make a chart, they're allergic to shellfish, and they're a vegetarian, and they're gluten-free. And now for her, the holy grail is if she can come up with one magic dish that meets everybody's needs, right? Boom, this one thing, everybody can eat that. But if not, sometimes, I remember one party we had recently, what are we having? And she said, well, we're going to have 4 different main dishes. 4? Like, yeah, there's one with meat and gluten-free, and that one's this, and all the different things. And she has these little signs that she puts up. She puts up these signs in front of the food. This is what the food is, and this is gluten-free, but it has nuts. And this doesn't have nuts, but it's not gluten-free. And all the little signs so all the people can figure out what they can eat. And this is the thing. This is what it looks like in her mind to show love to all these people. And it is pretty cool. One of my favorite things I get to notice is when people come, especially people who do have complicated dietary stuff, and they're super used to having to show up to a party and having there be nothing they can eat, and they're like, don't worry, I brought food and it'll be fine, and they're kind of used to that. And then they show up. And they're like, oh, look, I can eat that, and 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 it's so clear. My wife, get this. This is amazing to me. She has figured out a way to make green beans vegetarian. Isn't that amazing? I didn't even know you could do that. But apparently bacon isn't a required ingredient. I didn't know that. But my wife, she researched, she studied cookbooks. She can make vegetarian green beans. So if you come to our house and you're a vegetarian, just let us know and we'll leave the bacon out. I didn't know you could. But that's a thing. This is the kind of, that is what we're talking about. Good parties welcome guests by putting their needs first. And when we do this, church, we're loving people like Jesus loved us. And I know it sounds silly, but I do not want you to underestimate how profoundly loved a person feels when you go out of your way to understand their needs and include them in your life. And they can tell you have disrupted your normal rhythms. When somebody comes to a party and there are 2 pots of green beans labeled differently, they know you did that on purpose, right? That suddenly isn't about green beans. It is about a way of loving people like Jesus. And in fact, Paul describes this very clearly. Paul writes to the Philippian church. He says this, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any comfort from his love, any common sharing in the Spirit, any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit, one mind. And this is what he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. In humility, value others above yourselves. Look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. What he's saying there is, if the situation requires it, make vegetarian green beans. That's what he's saying. And if not, you can make regular ones. That's the kind of thing. This is the demonstration of love that happens in the context of Christian hospitality. So let's think about it. It's a practical series, so we're going to get practical. In the communities and spaces where you operate, what would it look like for you to show love to the stranger? That's what Hebrews said, remember? Keep on loving the brothers and sisters. Oh yeah, by all means, keep loving the people that are already there and already part of the party and already know they belong. Keep on loving them, but don't forget to show hospitality to the strangers. In your home, what would it look like for you to disrupt the rhythms of your home so that you had room to invite somebody new into the fellowship? In your relationships, maybe your buddies at work, you've got a kind of a crew and you all go to lunch. What would it look like for you to disrupt the rhythms of your crew to include a couple new people who have showed up recently in the office and you didn't even notice that they felt left out because you weren't paying attention. You were focused on the keep on loving the brothers and sisters. You weren't not forgetting to practice hospitality to strangers. So, some of you are in a Sunday school class or a small group. Awesome, way to go. I'm so glad you're there. What would it look like for your Sunday school class or your small group to practice intentional welcome to a stranger? Don't just keep on loving the brothers and sisters, but practice hospitality. Do you have a strategy to make sure if there are new people, somebody talks to them and somebody invites them to lunch? Do you talk on purpose? Talk less to the people you know and more to the people you don't know just to make sure that everybody feels welcome? It's super interesting. I've shared this a couple times from the pulpit, but at least, I would say on average, twice a year, I'll be talking to somebody who's been at the church, let's say 6 or 7 months. You know, just chit-chat, how are things going, blah, blah, blah. And at some point I'll say, have you found a group yet? And at least twice a year, somebody will say, well, we went to a couple, but we just couldn't make a connection. And I'll kind of dial into that a little bit. Oh, really? Well, tell me about that, blah, blah, blah. Almost always, eventually they say, well, nobody ever invited us to lunch. Not the teacher was bad or the lesson was weird, but nobody ever, that's the thing they say. And I know exactly why. It's because we just kept on loving brothers and sisters. We did Hebrews 13:1. Keep on loving the brothers and sisters. We forgot about 13:2. But don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. In every setting of our lives, the question is, have you done the work to make your guests feel welcome? Do you keep a thing of chicken nuggets in the back of your freezer in case the family you invited over has kids and they don't like whatever weird food you're into, And you just cook the chicken nuggets. And you know what those chicken nuggets say to a bunch of parents who are embarrassed that their kids won't eat anything but chicken nuggets? Those chicken nuggets tell those parents, we got you. We love you. We've been there. We get it. Truffle Brussels sprouts, yeah, we get, and that's not every 4-year-old's favorite. Yeah, we got you covered. We got it. We made plans for you. We prepared for you. We dropped what we were doing. And this is the love of Christ that is demonstrated. We will give up our own needs and our own plans. We will even mess up our menu, mess up our rhythm, mess up our schedule for the sake of another. And Paul says actually this posture is essential to Christian evangelism. Here's the way he describes it. He writes to the Corinthian church, listen, I'm free. I belong to no one. But I have made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jew, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I'm not free from God's law, but I'm under Christ's law, so as to win those not having a law. To the weak, I became weak. And this actually is a direct reference to a hospitality crisis in the Corinthian church. He talks about in chapter 8, they had this crisis. Some people thought they could eat meat that had been sacrificed to idols, and some people were like, no, you can't eat that meat. And this was dividing the church because they couldn't eat together. And in chapter 8, Paul just says, come on, I would rather become a vegetarian than divide the church. We're not going to do this. We're not going to divide over hospitality. We're going to accommodate one another's needs. And here he references it again. To the weak I become weak so as to win the weak. I have become all things to all people so that all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel that I may share in its blessings. This is the kind of church we are trying to be. A church that does the work to welcome the stranger, to disrupt our habits so that we can meet their needs. I'm so grateful. A ton of you serve on our welcome team. We've got a magnificent welcome team, and you need to know you are the front of the gospel. You are the first declarer of the good news. When you help somebody find a parking place or make it through a door or figure out how to drop their kids off or be smiled at as they walk into the sanctuary, that is the front of the gospel. That is the first articulation of the good news. We as a church, we will organize ourselves so that those who are strangers feel as welcome as possible among us. But it takes work. It takes work to love strangers well because you've got to get to know them. You don't know what their needs are. It's all kinds of work. It's so much easier just to love the people you already know. But Hebrews says, keep on loving the ones you know, but don't forget to practice hospitality to strangers. So here's our strategy. Number one, make more room. In your life, have you done the work to carve out the days? If you haven't done it yet, do it today. Get out your summer calendar. Find 3 dates on the calendar. Like I can invite Fred to breakfast that morning. And we can invite those 3 neighbors we see. We'll invite them over to the house for a barbecue. And on that day, we can call the cousins that we haven't seen in ages and reconnect. Good parties make more room. Have you made room in your life to include a few strangers? Number 2, good parties have a good reason and a good occasion. The occasion can be any excuse you can come up with. 4th of July is coming up. Father's Day is right around the corner. That's a pretty good occasion for a party. The reason, though, is so that you can love them like Jesus did. Number 3, good parties have a good guest list. Who are the people that God has put in your life? Don't ignore them. Don't pretend like you don't have people. I believe that God has put people in your life that you can have a party with. Somebody last week told me a story. They were talking about how they were doing a bunch of construction work, and they had this regular crew that was at their house all the time. And these are the people God has put in my life, but I don't know what to do for them. But then they had a thing. I know what I'll do. I'll throw a party for them. And so one day he just showed up at the job site with pizza and soda and snacks and food, just not a little lunch, this massive spread. And just threw a party for these people and sat there with them and ate lunch and learned their names. And suddenly they became human again and not just people he was giving money to for a service. Who are the people God has put in your path that you could throw a party for? And then lastly, good parties are places of welcome. So here's my invitation, church. Let's do it. Let's actually throw parties. I think by now you've figured out the function of these messages is not so you will learn more about how to plan parties. Martha Stewart can teach you how to plan parties. Our goal is to actually plan parties, to actually invite some strangers into a deeper relationship in our lives. Here's the idea that's in my brain. What if, because of this series, between now and the end of the summer, we together threw 1,000 extra parties? That sounds about right, doesn't it? That's about like 2.5 parties per household here, you know? You could do that. Some of you are like, I'll throw 5. Great. Somebody else will throw 2. It'll all average out. What if we threw 1,000 extra parties? And what if in those parties we invited, 3 or 4 new people to each one? We could show love to 5,000 people this summer. That actually sounds like a lot of fun to me. Beyond the fact that Christ says the wise man is the one who hears the word and does it. So there's that. There's the obedience factor. But this actually sounds like a fun command to obey. So that's my challenge to us. My hope is that you will throw 2 or 3 extra parties. The ones you were already going to throw don't count, okay? 2 or 3 extra parties where you intentionally think, who are the people that are at the edge of my social world? But I might have a chance to love them if I invited them in and showed them genuine welcome. I will say, if you have people that are close to your social world and you've been looking for a time to invite them to church, next week would be a great week. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be day camp Sunday, so we'll have a bunch of kids in here. But the message is going to be it's going to be on good parties, but it's going to be about the party God wants to throw for us in our lives. And it's going to be really good and beautiful, just kind of declaration of the gospel. Kids will be here. It'll be fun. So maybe that's your invitation. Maybe the party for you is, hey, come to church with me, and then I'll take you out to lunch, celebrate Father's Day. Or maybe you've got some other vision. Jesus says, hear my words and do them. 1,000 parties, 5,000 people find out Jesus loves them. I think we can do it. Let me pray for you right now. Gracious God, help us to live obedient to your word. Help us to be a people of hospitality. Help us to do what Hebrews says. By all means, we want to keep on loving the brothers and sisters. Keep on loving the people we already know and that are already in our life. But don't let us forget to show that same love to strangers. Maybe we'll even entertain an angel, but we'll definitely get to show them how much Jesus loves them. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.